Honestly, I was convinced I would have been restricted on social media by this point. Looking closely at my timeline and notifications right now, I am completely amazed. I anticipated some heavy backlash today, particularly given the recent content we've been dropping on this channel. Yet, here I am, completely untouched and ready to roll. Now, let's be clear. I don't make a habit of aggressively mentioning people or calling out specific accounts across the internet just to provoke a response. At the end of the day, everyone is online. They are bound to notice it. The athletes observe it. The coaching staff observes it. The front offices observe it. Even your family members notice it. Once you publish something online, it remains there indefinitely. As of this moment, Stephanie White has not restricted my account, which suggests to me that she is either oblivious to the mounting criticism or completely paralyzed by the current downward spiral of this organization. But let me emphasize a crucial point, and I need every single person watching this live stream to pay close attention. Stephanie White needs to spend the next few days completely disconnected from social media, step away from her devices, activate Do Not Disturb mode, and take a moment to collect herself. This upcoming week is going to be incredibly taxing, relentless, and unforgiving for her. I am telling you, it is going to be an incredibly draining stretch. Personally, I don't believe she will handle this well at all. This entire predicament threatens to damage her professional career, her credibility, and her status within professional basketball. Consider what happens if the executive management of the Indiana Fever actually chooses to intervene. Imagine if they evaluate the absolute disaster occurring on the hardwood and make the rumored decision to terminate her contract. Should that occur, I genuinely doubt any other franchise in the WNBA will want to take a chance on Stephanie White. They won't want to absorb the overwhelming media circus currently surrounding her, nor will they want to accept the incredibly flawed tactical adjustments we are witnessing every single night. Before we break down the game film and analyze every single word from this post-game media session, we have to talk about the primary issue dominating the conversation. An incredible amount of misinformation has been circulating over the past day. People were actively fabricating narratives online, claiming her termination was already official, asserting that Jan Jensen was traveling from Iowa to execute an unprecedented dual coaching assignment, and even prominent mainstream sports personalities like Skip Bayless were completely tricked on social media by accounts with fewer than 500 followers. It was completely fabricated news, everyone. It was entirely manufactured. However, just because the internet went into a frenzy over false rumors doesn't mean the core problems aren't deeply troubling. The internal friction is genuine. The tactical collapse is genuine. And the game footage never misleads. Let's examine exactly what unfolded immediately following the conclusion of last night's game. The immense difference between how a premier athlete processes a painful defeat versus how a head coach addresses that same painful defeat reveals everything you need to know about the fractured state of the Indiana Fever. We witnessed the Fever get completely overwhelmed in a 100-84 defeat against a brand new expansion squad, the Portland Fire. Let that reality sink in for a moment. An organization with championship aspirations, possessing the most dynamic and generational talent in the entire sport, getting utterly embarrassed by a newly formed franchise. The moment the final whistle blows, media personnel assemble, microphones are positioned, and Caitlin Clark is forced to take the podium to answer tough questions following one of the worst statistical nights of her entire basketball career. She logged only 22 minutes on the court, recording a mere 6 points while converting just one of her 7 field goal attempts, and spent significant portions of the contest glued to the bench due to accumulating fouls. A journalist directed a very pointed question at Caitlin regarding the defensive failures. The journalist noted, "Obviously, we don't want them getting that close to the basket, but I think looking at their offense, they were able to get help side and then have dump-offs to the bigs down low. And I think for us just making sure that we're there a little bit quicker in our rotations, which I think will have to be better the next game." Following that, another media member raised the ultimate question, inquiring whether the recent modifications to officiating guidelines or the manner in which referees are calling games this year are disrupting how the Fever operate as a cohesive defensive group. Now, a lesser competitor, a younger athlete, or someone searching for an easy justification would have immediately seized that opportunity. They would have placed the blame entirely on the officiating. They would have argued that the referees made it impossible to play physical defense. They would have voiced frustration regarding the rhythm of the match. Instead, What did Caitlin Clark choose to do? She looked directly into the gathered microphones and stated, "Officiating wasn't our problem tonight." That was Caitlin Clark quietly signaling to the entire basketball community exactly where the true fault lies. She was communicating clearly, without explicitly naming her coach, that the officiating crew was not the reason the Indiana Fever surrendered a century mark of points to the Portland Fire. Do you all want to know who was truly responsible? Do you genuinely want to discover who caused the failure last night? I am going to reveal to you exactly who was at fault for this performance. Let me display this graphic on the broadcast. Let me enlarge this image for everyone watching so you can view it with total clarity. This exact image captures the true issue. This display, this tactical arrangement, this completely unyielding coaching framework was the root cause. Caitlin Clark's statement was her method of informing the public that she refuses to hide behind empty justifications. She clarified that the referees were not the issue. We understand exactly what that implies. We understand your position, CC. We see right past those carefully crafted corporate replies, and we clearly recognize the tactical mismanagement occurring on that sideline. What makes this situation even more mind-boggling is the vast disparity in taking personal responsibility. The media pressed further, questioning Caitlin about her compounding foul issues. They asked, "Caitlin, you obviously had 5 fouls and that kind of altered your second half. How does that affect you?" Observe the manner in which Caitlin responds to this inquiry. This is a 24-year-old marquee player taking complete, undivided accountability for what transpired on the hardwood. She avoids shifting blame to her teammates. She avoids criticizing the defensive blueprints, and she avoids blaming the hostile arena atmosphere. Her exact words were, "Yeah, I mean, it's hard when you foul. And I just need to do a better job being straight up. Keep the defender in front of me. And also if they're going to hunt ISOs, just move my feet a little bit better." She added, "And yeah, definitely some tough ones, but that's just basketball. It's just a game, Learn from it, watch the film, and come back next game and be ready to go." This is Caitlin Clark standing firm and asserting, "I, personally, need to elevate my game." She openly recognizes that Portland was intentionally targeting her in one-on-one isolation plays. She acknowledges that she must improve her lateral movement, maintain verticality, and discover a method to avoid collecting careless infractions that force her off the court. She swallows her pride following a dismal 6-point outing and commits to reviewing the game film to correct her own individual errors. That is the behavior of an organizational anchor. That represents true leadership. However, the media inquiries then shifted toward the overarching tactical collapse. A reporter questioned her regarding the disastrous third quarter, during which the Portland Fire exploded for an incredible 37 points in a single 10-minute stretch. Surrendering 37 points to Portland in just the third period. What exactly fell apart for your team? Caitlin looked down at the box score, visibly startled by the statistic, and echoed the number, 37. She then attempted to comprehend how a professional defensive unit allows nearly 40 points in a solitary quarter to an expansion roster. She remarked, "Got a nothing. I think they did a great job just hunting the spreads. They got a few open threes. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. It was just some of those rotations." She continued, "Yeah, rotations were a little bit slow. And everything that in every coverage that we really tried and when we switched, they did a great job exploiting it. They played with great energy. So, you got to give Portland credit. I thought they were really good." She concluded, "They were aggressive. Obviously, they shot the ball well. Almost 40% from 3, 50% from the field. It's a recipe for success. And, we just have to be a little bit more disruptive in everything that we're doing." Let me ask you a question. When Caitlin mentions every coverage that we really tried and when we switched, they did a great job exploiting it, who do you imagine she is referring to? Who is formulating those specific defensive coverages? Who is making the managerial choice to switch every perimeter exchange, permitting Portland's young backcourt players like Carla Lee to completely isolate the exact defenders they desired? Who is instructing this roster to run defensive blueprints that leave the interior defense completely exposed to simple drop-off passes to opposing post players? That serves as a direct criticism of the coaching staff's game preparation and their total failure to make real-time adjustments while an opponent is pouring in 37 points against them in a single quarter. Caitlin is signaling to the public immediately after the game that the roster was out there attempting to execute defensive schemes that were fundamentally broken from the opening tip. Now, let's look at the other side of the footage. Let's analyze Stephanie White's portion of this post-game media availability, because this is where the total absence of responsibility transitions from frustrating to completely intolerable. This is an experienced head coach, an individual secured on a lucrative contract running through the year 2029, sitting before reporters after an embarrassing 16-point blowout defeat to an expansion team. I want you to pay close attention to how she communicates with the media. A reporter initiated a routine, open-ended question regarding the shifting flow of the game, noting that Portland called a timeout and completely altered the trajectory of the game. They asked, just what changed either on their end or on your end? If you are the leader of an organization with championship aspirations, your immediate commentary should focus on your tactical approach, your adjustments, your execution, or your own failure to position your athletes for success. Instead, how does Stephanie White reply? She addresses the media panel and states, "I just thought they were the hungrier team. I thought that they played with a relentless, effort, a relentless pursuit to get to what they wanted to be disruptive on defense, to get to their spots on offense. I thought their competitive spirit was better than ours." Are you absolutely kidding me with that response? Your primary assessment after suffering a blowout loss to a first-year expansion franchise is simply that the opponent possessed more desire? You are the director of this team. You are the person controlling the strategy, yet your automatic justification is to openly question the competitive drive of your own players. That represents a textbook evasion of responsibility from a coach who refuses to acknowledge that her tactical blueprint was completely dismantled by the opposing bench. You cannot look at a starting lineup featuring elite talents like Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell and casually assert that they fell short because they lacked competitive drive. They fell short because they were placed in a flawed system on the court. The game film demonstrates precisely how that systemic breakdown occurred. Let's analyze the absolute turning point of this entire basketball game. This is the exact moment that has the entire online community demanding Stephanie White's termination, and it explains precisely why this coming week will be incredibly difficult for her. During the opening 3 minutes of the first quarter, Caitlin Clark was absolutely dominating as a playmaker. She recorded 3 assists in those initial 3 minutes. The basketball was moving quickly, the transition pace was electric, the offense was operating smoothly, and the Fever were establishing great chemistry. Then, at approximately the 6:30 mark of that opening period, Stephanie White makes a decision that contradicts basic basketball strategy. She removes both Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston from the lineup the exact same moment. She sidelines her premier playmaker and her dominant low-post anchor simultaneously. What unfolded the exact moment they checked out of the game? The Portland Fire instantly launched a devastating 13-2 scoring run. They completely shifted the game's momentum, seized control of the scoreboard, and the Fever spent the remainder of the evening facing an uphill battle trying to overcome a significant deficit. A journalist directly confronted her about this decision during the press conference, pointing out, "And Caitlin had 3 assists in the first 3 minutes of the game. Then both her and Aaliyah checked out, I think around the 6:30 mark. Then Portland went on a 13-2 run. Just what was the reasoning for checking them out? Or did either of them request it?" Listen to Stephanie White's rationale for this flawed substitution methodology. She claimed, "Well, AB's still on a minute restriction, so she's coming out. And typically that's around the same time that we've been taking Caitlin out." She added, "Before we didn't in Golden State, just 'cause quite honestly, we didn't brave in that environment without another ball handler on the floor. So that's been our typical substitution pattern." Observe how she repeatedly relies on the collective pronoun, we. She states that it is around the same time that we have been removing Caitlin, and that it represents our standard substitution protocol. Notice how she completely distances herself from the personal choice of managing the rotation. There is no admission of making a tactical error with the lineup, or acknowledging that she shouldn't have removed both foundational players the same time while the offense was thriving. Instead, she attributes the mistake to a standard substitution sequence. This is professional basketball, Stephanie. This isn't a recreational league where a mechanical timer dictates exactly when to substitute players regardless of the actual situation on the court. You are competing against an aggressive Portland roster. Your superstar playmaker has accumulated 3 assists in 3 minutes. The team possesses all the momentum, yet you choose to blindly follow a predetermined rotation schedule that completely dismantles your team's offensive rhythm. She then references the preceding matchup against the Golden State Valkyries, another contest they dropped, by the way, with a final score of 90-88, explaining that they kept Caitlin on the floor longer because they felt uncomfortable navigating that specific environment without an additional primary ball handler. Well, guess what? You lacked an additional elite ball handler on the floor against Portland as well, and your rigid substitution pattern triggered an immediate 11-point deficit that ultimately decided the game. The total absence of situational awareness and the complete refusal to modify strategy based on the flow of the game is genuinely hard to comprehend. Yet, the narrative worsens as the media session progresses. Journalists continued to press her regarding the guard rotation and the cascading foul dilemmas that crippled the team during the second half. They inquired, and kind of on that as well. You know, Caitlin picked up her 4th foul, had to come out in the 3rd. Raven had her 4th foul in the 3rd as well. Just how did that affect your point guard rotation losing those times? Stephanie countered with additional deflections, stating, "Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's tough when you have your primary ball handlers that are, in foul trouble." She continued, "It hurts, your ability for number 1, for them to be on the floor, and number 2, I thought Portland did a really good job of attacking the matchups that they wanted. And that created foul trouble, that created rotations." She further noted, it created opportunities for them to run free for offensive rebounds as well because we were in rotations. And then obviously when you got players in foul trouble, you got to weigh the risk of leaving them out there. Let's analyze this specific coaching philosophy because it uncovers the fundamental defect within Stephanie White's defensive framework. She openly concedes that Portland executed an excellent strategy by targeting the specific individual matchups they desired. Let me present a very basic question to anyone who possesses a fundamental understanding of basketball strategy. Who permitted Portland to secure those specific matchups? Who engineered a defensive framework that mandates automatic switching on every single screen? This approach allowed Portland's primary ball handlers to effortlessly manipulate perimeter coverage and isolate whichever defender they wished to target. You are the individual who formulated these defensive principles, Stephanie. You hold the title of head coach. If the opposing offense is repeatedly targeting a specific matchup that is generating immediate foul issues for your crucial backcourt players, it is your responsibility as the strategist to alter the coverage. You abandon the switching strategy. You instruct your perimeter players to fight over the top of the screens. You position your interior defenders deeper to safeguard the paint. You implement a zone defense. You execute any adjustment alternative aside from standing passively on the sideline watching your marquee athletes get systematically exploited until they are forced to remain on the bench with 5 personal fouls. Then she has the audacity to sit before reporters and lament that being caught in rotations permitted Portland to secure uncontested offensive rebounds. The reason your squad was out of position to secure defensive rebounds is because your defensive framework is an unorganized mess that compels your post players to switch out onto the perimeter, leaving the interior completely unprotected. When Aaliyah Boston is required to switch out to contest a perimeter player 25 feet away from the rim due to your schematic guidelines, who do you imagine is left under the basket to box out and secure the ball? Absolutely no one. It triggers a cascading sequence of failure. Despite this, Stephanie White discusses these defensive rotations as if they are an unavoidable phenomenon over which she possesses absolutely no influence. The assembled journalists, detecting the transparent contradiction between the coach's justifications and the player's direct insights, confronted her with a direct quote from Caitlin Clark's media session. They stated, and Caitlin said, with Portland scoring 37 points in the 3rd quarter, she said she thought rotations were a little bit slow then, but how does foul trouble just go into that? Observe how Stephanie White completely brushes aside Caitlin's tactical evaluation of the defensive breakdown. She looked directly at the journalist and responded, Glass, I don't know if foul trouble has a lot to do with rotations. I think it's just anticipation. She added, I think it's activity, anticipation, and awareness. You know, we talk about our 3A all the time. Active, aware, and anticipate. She went on to say, you know, when we started going to some of our doubles, we were slowing our rotations, and we've got to anticipate when we've got to be active and get there quickly. But, you know, there has to be a sense of urgency. And I thought that they played with more urgency than we did. Consider the profound lack of self-awareness required to make a statement like that. She openly confesses, when we started going to some of our doubles, we were slowing our rotations. Let's pause right there. Who issued the command to implement those double teams? Stephanie, you are the one who orchestrated the choice to commit 2 defenders to the basketball, which inherently forces the remaining 3 athletes on the court to scramble across the entire floor to contest uncovered perimeter shooters. You made the call to double team. You introduced a high-risk defensive gamble that demands flawless, instantaneous weak side rotations. When your players could not miraculously cover 80 feet of vacant hardwood rapidly enough to stop an elite perimeter shooting roster, you deflected blame onto their anticipation and their level of intensity. She utilizes this corporate coaching slogan, the 3 A's, active, aware, and anticipate, as a defensive shield to deflect from the transparent reality that her strategic adjustments were an absolute failure. You cannot double-team a dynamic perimeter roster like Portland, watch them dissect your defense for 37 points in a single quarter, and then sit the podium claiming the players simply failed to rotate quickly enough. You placed them in an unwinnable scenario on the court, and rather than accepting responsibility for a flawed tactical choice, you chose to publicly criticize the entire locker room by questioning their effort and situational awareness. This deflection is not restricted solely to the defensive end of the floor. Let's analyze the offense, because the Indiana Fever's offensive framework currently appears entirely fragmented, uninspiring, and completely stagnant. The media highlighted the reality that this group is experiencing severe difficulties establishing any semblance of rhythm from beyond the three-point line. They noted, and this is the second straight game you guys have started struggling from three-point range. I think Thursday was you started 0 and 8 from 3, and then tonight it was 0 of 9 before. Sophie made a three-pointer late in the second quarter. Just how can you get that going earlier if there's a way to do that? Back-to-back performances featuring historically poor perimeter shooting. Starting 0 for 8 against Golden State, followed by an 0 for 9 opening stretch against Portland. This is not an anomaly. This indicates a fundamental breakdown in offensive floor spacing, ball rotation, and shot orchestration. Yet, observe the manner in which Stephanie White addresses this perimeter shooting crisis. She stated, I don't think we've shot the 3 ball particularly well all season. I think it's just reps. Our players are in the gym, they're getting reps. It's finding your teammate, your open teammate on time. She continued, it's giving them the ball on target. I feel like oftentimes, when we're hitting them, it's 1 or 2 dribbles too late. Sometimes we're having to reach all over the place for the ball and we're just not knocking them down. She concluded, I think that's something that's going to come. But I'd like to see us early in the game, try to get to the rim a little bit more, get some opportunities in the paint the free throw line. And then when the defense collapses, then we can get those uncontested looks. Consider that statement. She literally stands before the media and claims the reason they are failing to convert perimeter shots is because the passes are arriving 1 or 2 dribbles too late, forcing the players to reach awkwardly to catch the basketball. She is directly attributing the failure to her playmakers, most notably her franchise point guard, who possesses elite passing precision, blaming them for poor distribution and flawed timing. She asserts that the solution simply involves putting in more practice repetitions in the gym. No, Stephanie. The issue resides entirely within your offensive framework. When your complete half-court strategy relies almost exclusively on high-screen mechanics with 0 weak-side player movement, the opposing defense doesn't have to exert themselves. They can aggressively crowd Caitlin Clark, trap her the apex of the screen, compel her to surrender the basketball, and effortlessly close out on your stagnant shooters who are standing completely still on the perimeter. That explains precisely why the passes feel late. Because the defense is already completely positioned and anticipating exactly where the ball is traveling. You were brought in with the reputation of being an offensive-minded tactician, an experienced leader hired specifically to maximize the greatest passing prospect women's basketball has ever witnessed. Yet, your remedy for a 2-game perimeter shooting slump is simply telling your players to get more practice shots and criticizing the accuracy of their passes. Then she concludes with the most cliché basketball commentary imaginable, stating she wants to see the team attack the rim earlier in the game to manufacture paint opportunities. How exactly are they supposed to attack the rim early in the contest when you choose to bench your primary perimeter threat and your elite low-post scorer just 6 minutes into the opening quarter? Your own unyielding substitution blueprints are directly sabotaging your roster's ability to establish the precise low-post presence and interior pressure that you are criticizing them for lacking. It represents a complete loop of coaching inconsistencies, and the total lack of structural accountability is genuinely beyond comprehension. It is truly unbelievable. This entire predicament serves as a major wake-up call for the executive management of the Indiana Fever organization. It is impossible to sustain success in professional athletics when your primary franchise asset sits on the podium absorbing all the criticism, taking total accountability for her personal difficulties, while the head coach sits right beside her deflecting blame. The coach relies on empty corporate catchphrases like the 3 A's, and subtly attributes the failure to the roster's competitive drive and passing precision following a historic defensive collapse. The athletes observe this behavior. The locker room recognizes it. The entire online basketball community sees exactly what is happening. You cannot insulate yourself behind a coaching agreement that extends through 2029 when the tactical failure occurring on the court is this blatant. If Stephanie White fails to conduct a serious self-examination this week, disconnect from social media, analyze the game footage with total objectivity, and accept that her unyielding rotation patterns and fundamentally flawed defensive principles are the primary factors restricting this incredibly gifted roster, this entire season threatens to derail completely before they even reach the midway point. Time is rapidly running out. The justifications have been completely exhausted, and the fan base is entirely finished watching this roster get mismanaged night after night. But listen, I want to get your thoughts on this. I see the live chat is completely overflowing with comments right now. William, I see you attempting to join the broadcast. I just placed another access link directly in the chat for you. Go ahead and select that link, configure your microphone, and I will bring you right onto the broadcast so we can discuss this live. To everyone else tuning in right now, make sure to select that subscribe option, hit the like button, and share your perspectives in the comments section below. Is Stephanie White completely out of her depth managing this Indiana Fever lineup, or do you believe the athletes actually need to improve their execution of the 3 A's and compete with greater intensity on the hardwood? Let me know your exact perspective regarding this rotation management failure, and let's keep this live discussion moving forward.